Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we have two guests on the show, two very special guests. First and foremost, we're joined by my good friend Dave Ulrich, speaker, author, thought partner on HR, leadership, and organization, and Peter Saville, psychologist, behavioral scientist, and founder of 10x Psychology. Welcome to the show. How are you both?
I'm good.
Terrific.
It's always that moment where it's like, who talks first?
Yeah.
I should probably learn to address one person at a time when I do the introduction. Where are you?
Thanks
where are you
for having us on.
That's all right. It's always a pleasure, Dave. I feel like you're almost a co-host by this point, joining you on the show. It's always good. It's always good to see you. Before we jump in, for those that are new to listening to the show that haven't come across you both, give everyone a quick intro. I'll start with yourself, Peter. Tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and sort of your background.
You want me to do that, do you?
Yes, Peter.
Okay. My background is a first degree in psychology, a master's, and a doctorate in psychology. I joined the National Foundation for Educational Research when at 27. I was chief psychologist. I left there in 1977 to form Saville and Holdsworth Limited, SHL, with Roger Holdsworth. We floated on the main stock exchange in 1997. Without any inward investment. We were then in about 40 countries worldwide. We're on flotation. I personally found the bureaucracy very difficult to deal with because I was mainly involved in the selling and creation of the products. I therefore left SHL, as did Roger, in 2003 to form Saville Assessment again. And then in 2016, we sold that for 45 million to Willis Towers Watson. And they asked me to go back, but I decided I'd like to start again with some new ideas. So I started 10x Psychology, based in Guildford in Surrey, where we're working on predictive analytics and machine learning to improve the selection process and the well-being and the engagement of people at work in the complete life cycle. So I've had this is my third company, and it was really the need I felt to develop new products and ideas that I developed the third one.
Wow.
So that's briefly my background.
I feel like I've got a lot to live up to in my life now. So after that as well. What about yourself, Dave? Over to you, Dave.
Over to me. Well, I'm standing here in awe. I don't create companies as readily. I love ideas. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan in the United States, and write books that most people don't buy that I hope work. I tend to be, I've said that ideas are often my best friends. They put me to sleep at night. They wake me up at night in the morning. And I love ideas that have impact and have spent a lot of time working on those issues. Amazing. And I should also just briefly say, welcome to my office. I think the coronavirus has made us feel distant, but we're not. We actually feel closer because I can peek into Chris's office and into Peter's office and get a feel for who you are. And I hope you can peek as well into my office.
I have in all the books behind me, by the way.
That is, yeah. For everyone listening, Peter let me know that there are certain people sort of that hire in books for their backgrounds, for their shows and for their interviews, which I thought was hilarious. And that's actually a business that exists that you hire in books to pretend that you read them, which is fun. That's interesting as well.
Actually, I have a lot of extra books they could buy from me. So have them give me a call.
If they're listening right now, Dave's open. What, just out of curiosity, Peter, what keeps you going? Right?
I suppose I was terrible at school early on, getting D and E grades. I couldn't spell, though my grammar was fine. But my report said prolific with ideas, highly creative and so on. So really, I could, developing the OPQ, the Occupational Personality Questionnaire, which SHL still distribute, I developed that, which the BPS was groundbreaking for its time, in that it was job related, now quite widely used across the States, because SHL joined up with Provisor, of course, to join one company. so I developed that. Then in Saville assessment, I then developed the Saville Wave Questionnaire, which it was more valid than the OPQ. Now we've developed another questionnaire, which is more valid than the actual Saville Wave Questionnaire. Just by making some tweaks, I could see the ways in which I could improve it. And I didn't know if it fully worked, but we've just done a very large validation study against work performance competencies, and we're about 10-20% more valid than the Wave and the OPQ as well. So really, it's an interest in. I also love teaching, so I did a lot of management training courses in psychometrics. They were 5-day courses, so they went right through from the basics to cost-benefit analysis, and designed those courses at SHL. They've been reduced now to 2 days, but people in Britain were all required to do this sort of training before they use tests. So it was really and I also quite enjoyed sales, believe it or not, but not in a pushy real estate agent sort of way, but hopefully listening and hopefully selling through knowledge. So when I was at the NFER, the Professor Wiseman said I was very odd because I had a business brain and an academic brain. But so basically, like Dave, it's really the interest in ideas and creativity of new products. And I could see a way where I could cut the completion time by 50% and actually get more validity out. And fortunately, that's worked in the new 10X personality questionnaires.
Amazing. It sounds like we have that in common, by the way, because in school I was definitely the ones with the D's and the E's and the F. But you put me in a graphic design class or an art class or a ceramics class, anything to do with creativity, I was there and I always had the ideas. But
I was playing soccer. That's my trouble. I wanted to kick a ball around.
Oh, I was the same as well. I played ice hockey, basketball. I was never praised on the ideas though, and I didn't understand the value of my ideas until I actually came into the business world.
Well,
and I realized the value of my ideas. And guess what? I ended up in sales.
In Britain, we then had the 11 plus, which I failed, but I was taken out of 13 within the Surrey Education Authority area and put into a grammar school at 13. So I actually roamed around Shepherd's Bush Market and learned to be savvy at one stage, and one end of the spectrum. And then at 13, I was put into a very academic grammar school where they selected throughout the whole county.
Really?
Without that, I would have not gone on to university. I suddenly clicked at 13. But of course, in Britain, they select 11, which my view is far too young.
Mm.
You see that in sports, that boys and girls are exceptional at 11, but they're not 18. Or some not, will come on quite late. We call them late developers. And in fact, there's educational evidence that they tend to do better than people that mature more early educationally. So perhaps you would say. So I was very fortunate in Epsom in Surrey to be put into a grammar school at 13.
Yeah, I never made it to school after that. So I skipped secondary school, college, university, and just went and got a job as a 15-year-old and carried on from there. So never actually went to school and just kind of learned on the job. That was everything I've ever done.
I've been a bouncer, I've been a milkman, I've been an electrician, I've worked on building sites. I've turned over the numbers in a bingo hall. About every job you can think of, I actually did as a student in order to buy a car, or first a scooter and be a mod down at Brighton.
Oh, really? Well, people tuning in right now are like, what show have I just tuned into? As well. Let's jump into the different careers you both had. A lot of it's based on research, and one of the questions we spoke about beforehand is, how do we turn innovation and research-based ideas into impact? I'll throw that to you, Dave.
I think Kurt Lewin, one of the great social psychologists, once said, "Nothing is as useful as a good theory." I believe that more strongly than ever. I think people have a lot of experiences. They have a lot of ideas. They have a lot of things that they do. But with a theory and then with research, you can figure out, why did that happen? And I'm always fascinated. If I can figure out why something happened, I can begin to replicate it. And research gives us the discipline to figure that out. I think Peter's research around selection and staffing and the individuals has allowed people to make decisions that can replicate his ideas. And for me, that's the power of research. it's ironic, real quick. I just got off an internet exchange on LinkedIn, and I love LinkedIn for these exchanges, where a man said, the hard sciences, chemistry and physics, have research. The soft sciences don't. What do you think? And I said, you've just thrown out 80 years of sociology, psychology. You're wrong. I mean, there is value in research-based phenomena. And I see that in organizations and in people, in leadership. And that's been my passion for decades.
But slightly different there, Dave, because I believe in research. But I remember in my university finals, we had a question was of facts, we had too many, of theories, too few. And I argued of bad theories, not yours, we have too many, and facts which are not replicated, we don't have enough. In my PhD viva, when I defended it against Hans Eysenck, he called me atheoretical. I said, no, I just believe in Occam's razor, that the simpler, the better in the theory. So in my experience, I've always tried to reduce very elaborate theories to being very pragmatic. So when it comes to measuring personality characteristics of work, I've concentrated more on work competencies than I'm not suggesting you're saying this, but say Freudian, psychoanalytic or other theories, which I don't think help very much in the workplace.
You know, I agree with much of that. In fact, because I've been working at home, I found things to show people. This is my dissertation from 40 years ago, and it's called Numerical Taxonomy. And so, Peter, my research is, how do you do statistics to simplify complicated? Oh, this is going to be so cool. Chris, this is show and tell of old guys. This is, oh my, look at the binding. Look at the binding. Mine is short. But I love research that simplifies. That's been my entire career.
Sure.
Is how do you take complex ideas and find simple solutions so they can have impact? And what a marvelous thing. And so anyway, I enjoy doing that and enjoy that process. I would love to hear some of what you're doing, Peter, in terms of the next generation in selection and staffing. And what does your research begin to show, especially coming out of this weird 6 months in terms of this corona crisis? But I would love to hear what you're finding in some of your latest research.
Well, my main concern was develop a self-report questionnaires. There's 3 of them, which are quicker, easier to take, and more valid than the ones I've developed before, which we seem to have achieved. But actually, in the lockdown, all of our staff have been fully employed. We've not furloughed anybody, because in Britain we get R&D credits for all the research we've been doing. And actually, working from home would actually be more productive than working in our offices. So that's what we're doing. And so they're not only just measures of personality, but cognitive abilities, engagement, well-being, motivation, and so on, all on a dashboard in real time. So basically, rather than being on separate HR, sort of spreadsheets, it's all together in one place, and they're all interconnected, including 360, where people rate other people. So we've not gone into sales mode yet, but we've already signed 2 big clients. Because what they heard when they saw what we were doing, they rather like the fact that everything is on one dashboard using machine learning.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity here, there's quite a few players in the space. How does your approach to workplace psychology go beyond the standard psychometrics? Because
when you get a report from any questionnaire like the 16PF, which is what my PhD thesis was on, or any report of that kind, there's no guarantee that one psychologist or HR person will interpret it in the same way. I mean, one person might say that assertiveness is 9 is a good thing. Another one says that they're over dominant, right? But what we've embedded is actually validation in the process. So there'll be follow-up of people. We could look at teams and see what sorts of people are missing in the teams, what skills are missing, suggest what in fact could be done about it. About recruiting people, because between myself and Roger Holdsworth in SHL, Roger was Marlborough to Cambridge and was very, very structured and detail conscious, very clever, spoke 7 languages. Yeah, I'm chaotic. I quite accept that. But it made for a good team.
Good balance. Yeah.
So, I mean, I fully recognized that I needed somebody to, when I went for careers advice from him, because I was 10 years younger than him, he suggested we form a company together. So after a few weeks of thought, I decided that's what we should do, because he had the structure. He could have been an accountant, actually. He was so strong in that area. But while I got on with the product development and more of the sales and training.
It sounds like my co-founder and Shane and I, Dave knows Shane as well. We're exactly the same. Shane's more the analytical process. He makes sure everything works and the foundations are there. And I'm off on my own little bubble, creating up new ideas, kind of just trying to disrupt who we are every single day. And looking at it, and from a sales perspective, I'm also the main person.
Chris, we've got a lot in common then.
Say that again?
We've got a lot in common.
We do. But we couldn't do what we do without the other half, and I think that's the important thing. Yeah,
I don't want my chief financial officer to be a risk taker and the collector figures and actually give me the worst scenario. If I funded Saville Assessment myself, and I'm funding 10x Psychology myself. But luckily with SHL, it was self-funding from the beginning. We made profits in the first year. And then we floated for about £240 million, something of that order.
You're just showing off now, Peter.
I know. So, people forget that. And I'm just saying that we didn't have any inward investment, but we gave all staff shares, effectively. But when you come to a public body and become a chairman of a PLC, there is so much bureaucracy involved. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I get it. One of the reasons I didn't take any outside investments for our organization, I was worried about that. I've heard of many stories along the way. But in terms of both of your careers, Dave, what's some of the core questions that you've focused on in your career and that you've tried to answer? Some of the core challenges.
The question I'm most intrigued with is, what can you do inside an organization with talent, the people, with the organization, with leadership? Three things: talent, organization, and leadership, to succeed in the marketplace. Our outcome variable is success in the marketplace, because without success in the marketplace, there is no organization. You don't hire people, you don't train people, you don't have well-being. And so we are really working hard, and have for decades, to say, what do I do with leadership, for example, to build my brand in the marketplace? What do I do with leadership to build confidence with investors? We did a book, Leadership Brand. We did research in a book, Leadership Capital Index. How do investors look at leadership and have higher confidence in the future of the firm? And so we look, for example, at culture. Culture is not the norms and values or the roots of the tree. Culture is the leaves and fruits of the tree that customers and investors find of value. And so we try to guide leaders, both in business and in HR, to make choices that will help them be successful with all their key stakeholders. That was too long of an answer, but it's the headline is, HR is not about HR. It's about helping an organization succeed in the marketplace.
Our first company, SHL, had 80 of the FTSE 100 as clients. And we were investigated by our Monopolies Commission, because we had such a massive, but we did everything with that company to build that brand. Even acquiring our own management training center, where we had a swimming pool put in. I had a swimming pool put in. I had superb food. Realizing with a training course or management training course that the actual location and the facilities are important as the course itself. I was so tired of running courses in bad hotels with bad food that we acquired our own. We had 95% occupancy of some 90 rooms, effectively. So
I think there's a picture of you, Peter, being thrown into that pool at one point, which is a terrific way to celebrate your success.
Oh, yeah, quite right. I was chairman. That's what my staff thought of me. They picked me up and threw it in. You know what? I put that pool in because that got us into the Red Book. It's the best management training courses in the UK. How many people used it?
None.
3%. Yeah. I was told this by the Hilton Group, that one of the main reasons why people choose a hotel is it's got a pool, and only about 15% actually use it. So I put it near to the training block so that people could see it and use it if they wish. But the amount of usage, other than throwing me in, wasn't in fact that great, but it did enable us to actually get into that particular book, which enabled us to actually, in every way, get our brand better known.
Mm-hmm.
There's a metaphor for what you just said. When we did one of the earlier books we did was on learning, and we called it Ideas with Impact. What you just described is the idea and the theory and all the research, and then the impact. And so a hotel has a pool, that's an idea, and the impact is to get people to come. I think in our HR field, we have a woeful gap between the ideas and the impact. And a challenge is to connect those two in a way that is sustainable. And so that's some of the work that we've been trying to do. We don't have a pool, but we have a deep reservoir of ideas, if I can take that water metaphor. And we hope that reservoir of ideas will be able to give people a choice of having impact and making a difference in helping their company succeed in the marketplace.
Yeah. I mean, if you judge a company by marketplace, aren't you then subject to the problems of the market when stock exchange values are going up and so on?
Absolutely. One of the things that we find, and we find that there's a quirk in the market. One of the things I love to study is stuff that is kind of a wrinkle on a sweater or a wrinkle in a shirt, something that doesn't make sense. And so one of the phenomena that we ended up writing a lot about is two firms in the same industry, Coke and Pepsi, have the same earnings, but their market valuation may differ 50%. So how does that make sense? The Hilton, a hotel, and the Marriott, a hotel chain, have the same earnings, but their market value differs. And so when we uncovered that, what we found is that a lot of market valuation are called intangibles. We're not the first people to study it. But what can you do then as an organization, not just to shape earnings, which we understand, you increase revenue, reduce costs, but to increase intangible value? Because an intangible value may range from 20 to 80% of a firm's value. There are firms like Amazon right now that are getting incredible market value, not because of their earnings, but their intangible value. So we have spent a lot of time with executives talking about how do you create an intangible asset that investors find value in. And we believe that a lot of that intangible value is talent. Does an investor believe that you've hired and selected better people because you use Peter's instrument? I just put the because in for you. It's organization. Does the investor believe that you have the right organizational culture, capability that gives you more value and leadership? And so what we love to do is to say the outcome is not just hiring people, it's hiring the right people through yours and others' instrumentation so that investors and customers and communities have increased confidence in the future.
Yeah, that's so very true. I mean, early on, I realized that, in fact, the selection procedure and materials were a reflection of that organization. And up to when we started SHL, all of the materials that were used looked like they came from the 18th century. When we took over the National Institute of Industrial Psychology, I quit in 1977 or so. I queried, in fact, that they had a lot of tests on the shelves that they were going broke at the time. And I said, well, which ones sell? And they said, well, and they don't look very good. And they said, well, the paper was very difficult to get during the last war. So I said, well, you've had them there for 30 years on the shelf and you don't know what's actually selling. They said, we're not in trade, you know. Got this response we got. And unfortunately, they went under. They were overtaken. So what we did, we decided we would really break the mold and publish in colour. And got them. In fact, it's my brother who was director of design at the Majesty Stationery Office, who designed them all in colour. And that was with Mars, who were early adopters, BP, etc. They immediately bought them, even though they were 5 times more expensive, because they actually looked the part, rather than actually looking like something out of Victorian England. So everything was done to make it easy to order. But we put things in kits rather than actually have a list of about 35 or 40 components and sold them as a kit. They even had a stopwatch and erasers and pencils in them. We also supplied the same day, while the NFER took 2 months to supply. and we took telephone orders, which they didn't. And also the importance of training, we realized when we trained them and gave them an end of course test after 5 days, they were so attached to us. They weren't going to go anywhere else in terms of the supply of those materials. But it did cause quite a shock in the industry. I got quite a lot of resistance from members of the British Psychological Society that we dare sort of publish a catalogue. Even a catalogue was seen as being outrageous at the time. But we got
Peter, you were the Amazon before Amazon.
I was about to say that. Exactly. It's like the earlier edition.
Amazons only have one breast and a sword.
Anyway. What about what lessons have you both learned or taken away from current events with COVID? What sort of the key takeaways that you've taken from this, Peter, in your work and the work that you will be doing with 10x Psychology, and then also same for yourself?
The new normal, weren't we? I read yesterday at Twitter saying that people can work from home, forever, as far as they can see. To my surprise, people working at home, even during our vacation for the school holidays, the output we've shown has been incredible. There's all sorts of issues about accessing people, of course, and improving communications, and also changes in leadership styles will probably include. I was going to write a chapter in a book called Fat Larry's Band, because they wrote a song called Zoom. Have you ever heard of that song?
I have now.
You look it up, called Zoom, and that went to #1 in the UK chart some years ago. So, I think we've got to be incredibly flexible in terms of also the safety in the workplace is an issue now, of course, for our people as well. So I think now more and more attention is being given here to well-being, and also the issue, of course, here we've been hit by taking the knee here as well, with all our pro footballers doing it, in terms of diversity of people of different cultures and backgrounds. So there's a great need for actually improving the diversity of people that we recruit.
Yeah, definitely a big theme through this. What are you seeing, Dave?
In my spirit of taxonomy, I like simple solutions. I'm going to suggest 5 things.
It's the big five. Either 5 or 3.
Yeah, the big five in Africa. I love what Peter just said. I call it personalization. I think we're seeing a lot more customization, personalization of the individual. When we advise leaders, we say, now start with emotion. Understand the empathy, the emotion. Number 2, the boundaries of work are so different. Work used to be a place. You get up in the morning, you go to work. Now work, the place is much less relevant. Although I think place still matters. As Peter said, you need a pool to get people to come. But I think the boundaries of work are around the values we share and what we do to win. Number 3, paradox. I think people that say, oh, here's the right way, go do A, long-term. It's long-term and short-term, value-based and bold, and navigating all those paradoxes. Number 4 is a world of incredible uncertainty. I actually, when people say, I know the new normal, what do you think? I say, I'm going to run away from you. I have no clue what the new normal is. I don't know. In America right now, our kids are a week away from school and they don't know if they're going to go or not. We happen to attend church. We have no idea what we're going to do. So personalization, new boundaries of work, paradox, uncertainty, all leading to what I think is guidance. How do we give people more disciplined guidance to navigate in this uncertain world? So those are the big 5 we've played with. I'm sure they're not complete, but those are the things we think about.
Yeah, they're definitely. What some of the things I would add to that, I think Peter already said a few, but health and well-being definitely have become the center of the workplace experience now, more so now than ever. I think it was something which was beginning to make its way in now before COVID, but now it's obviously straight to the forefront, which I'm really excited to see and happy about, especially someone who suffers from anxiety and depression, and my own mental health and well-being is something I've always been afraid of talking about at work. So good to see that that's now front and center.
Did you actually get COVID?
Pardon?
Did you actually get COVID? Did you actually get it?
in terms of my anxiety. So when I say my mental health and well-being is really more so my anxiety. Pardon, sorry?
I had it for 4 weeks.
You had COVID?
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm
no,
so
that's
sorry.
right. Because I was in pain, enormous pain. I couldn't sleep, coughing. I got isolated in my own house, but actually it never went to my lungs. Now, pain's fine, but when you can't breathe, that must be terrible. But for some reason, it went to my lungs, as it did to my daughter, who actually got it. So I've now got the antibodies. So perhaps I'm a bit blasé about it. How long they'll last, I don't know. But it's a very strange disorder indeed.
I'm so glad you're okay. I'm glad you're okay.
Fine. I never felt particularly anxious for some reason, strangely enough. But I'm glad to get it over with.
That's one way of looking at it, right? And if you come through it and you're better, and a lot of people have it, they had no idea, right? Some people, most people actually, I think, are asymptomatic and don't even know.
And a superb local doctor who gave me antibiotics. I'd also had pneumonia jab beforehand and things like that. So I was very, very lucky that I had that before, so it didn't turn to pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad yourself and the family are healthy and fine.
I had flu, Asian flu, and Hong Kong flu, but nothing quite like this. This is a very, very different. Where you lose your taste, the smell, very, very peculiar.
Is that how you knew? How did you know you had it? Or
coughing. Unfortunately, in Britain, we weren't testing properly. I had every symptom going, anyway, a superb local doctor gave me a series of medications to keep my chest clear. Gave me antibiotics to stop it going to pneumonia, and so on. So I was very well looked after, even if it was by not by going to their surgery, but actually by talking. And my wife was an ex-nurse before she was a senior social worker in child protection. So she got it as well, but not as badly as me. Mm-hmm. I think my 10-year-old boy got it. He was awful at 6 o'clock, had the temperature, had a pain and whatever. 8 o'clock the next morning, he jumped out of bed. He was fine.
It's their immune system, right, at that age. It's firing all cylinders at that age as well. Well, I think it's probably better that you didn't go to the hospital and that you had someone local.
Luckily, I didn't need to.
Well, good to see. Before I forget, guys, I want to jump into some LinkedIn questions because everyone's throwing so many questions at me on LinkedIn, and I know they're going to get upset if I don't at least ask a few. So one of the questions I had was from Stefan Tonen. Hi, Stefan. Thanks for joining us again. He said, any ideas around, how do you preserve, that great company culture that you have once teammates are no longer, in the office and now working remote? I'm going to pick on you, Dave, there.
Yeah, I love that question because we love to study culture, Stefan. If you define culture from the outside in, culture is not our values. It's not the roots of the tree. Culture is our identity in the mind of the best customer. No matter where you work, in a coffee shop, at home, in a regular office, in a car, as long as you live the values that create value for your customer, that culture is there. And it evolves. And so you see companies evolving their culture from being an in-company company. Chris is a great example. I've known Chris for a while. His company had a culture of producing great content in person through conferences. Yeah. Chris, in the last 4 months or 5 months, you've created a new identity doing this virtually. By the way, that's the same culture if the culture is defined as what creates value for our customer. Notice the goal of culture is not to have a set of values. It's to have values that create value for the customer. So, Stefan, no matter where you work, if you're creating value for a future set of customers, you succeed. Chris would be a case study. And I thought Peter's example of creating colored paper and a book of options. What a great example. What Peter did conceptually was create a value-based culture against the customers who are buying his product, which is why Peter talks about his products, 10X Psychology, SHL, and others, Saville, being so successful because he's building an organization based on what customers value the most. And I hope, Stefan, that in HR, we don't do that very often. We have great roadmaps or heat maps of our culture, but they're not creating value for our customers. So when you think about that outside in logic, that's where the culture will probably be sustained.
What we do is we use Microsoft Teams. So we've shared chats there between everybody. We have a digital kitchen. There's lots of collaboration. And we have times where we have quiz competitions between people to bring people together, in addition to them all operating strongly towards the actual supply of our products, okay, by September, October this year. So there's a lot of chats going on between all of our teams and interconnection between them by that technology.
Yeah,
that's worked quite well.
Mm-hmm. It's important to have all those moments where it's not just always about work, and you can come together. But Dave, I do love your point about the culture isn't defined by that; it's defined by the customers, right? The customer journey, the customer experience, and delivering value.
Yeah,
so no matter where you are, how you're operating, whether it's face to face, digitally, anywhere in the world, that should be your North Star.
You know, there's an old saying in HR: people are our most important asset. I think it's wrong. Our people are our customers' most important asset. And if you put what we do with our people through the lens of customer, for example, you talk about well-being and employee experience. Who disagrees with that? I mean, you'd have to be a lunatic. But here's the power. Our research showed, and some research by folks, Ben Schneider and David Bowen and others, the correlation between employee engagement inside or well-being or whatever mantra you have, whatever metric, is highly correlated to customer experience and customer well-being. And when you create that virtuous cycle between the employee experience and the customer experience, then the employee experience will be more likely sustained. That's the kind of work that I just find fascinating, is how do we build things inside our firm with talent, organization, and leadership, my very stupid topology, people, organization, and leadership, that create value for those outside the firm. And there's a lot to explore in that space. It's a rich space because a lot of folks haven't done it. I love to go to heads of HR and say, so who are your biggest competitors? And they list them. And I say, what are their earnings? They've got them. What are their price earnings ratios? How does the market value their earnings differently from yours? What are you doing to change that market perception of their valuation? And a lot of HR people go, wow, that's interesting. I like people. And I say, that's a great start, but I like people so that we can build the right systems. And that's one of the things I like so much about Peter's discipline and psychometrics. His selection tools that will come out obviously this fall will give us the discipline to get the right people. And if we can show that to our investors, our customers, our communities, we are more successful in the marketplace. And that creates the cycle that I think creates successful enterprises. Boy, I just gave a long lecture.
Very good.
Yeah. So, Peter, when can we expect, because I was looking earlier, I was super excited. You've got, maybe I missed one, but you've got sort of the 10x motivation, 10x personality, and 10x ability. Is there more that I've missed on that one? Because those are the ones that really stood out to me.
Cognitive abilities 360 and so on were all coming out. But the beauty is that we're doing machine learning and predictive analytics on that. So we're actually doing validation of what actual competencies do they actually, correlate with job success, rather than subjective opinion of looking at a report. For example, it was found with assessment centers that when you allow people to interfere with the actual results of different exercises in a wash-up session, the validity of that decision went down. So the European work psychology now recommend that, in fact, you just take the exercises, turn them to standard scores, and just add them up. And that gives a better prediction than actually allowing people to muck about with the data. Philip Vernon showed this after the Second World War with officer selection. He actually found that the worst assessors were psychiatrists, the next were psychologists, and the best were the line officers, probably because they'd been there, they worked there. But he also found that if they added up just the performances on those assessment centers, I must say to Henry Murray, that the great psychologist from America came over to help on those particular war office selection boards. If you just added up performance on those exercises, that gave the best prediction of all. So when people start messing around with the data, make excuses for somebody that they like in the interview, there's a danger they overlook very telling information.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking here to optimize, the actual prediction of who succeeds or not by having validation embedded into the process.
Mm-hmm. How do you ensure that there's no bias within the AI?
We check the bias. We've had terrible examples here of algorithms which are produced, which are laughable, absolutely laughable. For goodness sake, feeding in the class size and giving them an advantage because they're smaller classes is bound to help private schools. Bound to help them. My two children go to a private school. There's only 12 children in a class. I went to a state school. There were 48 children in a class. So that was not going to help social mobility. The Royal Statistical Society president, they offered to help with these equations, but they were not allowed to because they had to sign a non-disclosure. Okay, and they refused to do that. They could have helped, but these equations, where we've had mayhem and problems in entrance to university, just really were not fit for purpose. So when you look at that questions like that, it was bound to actually favour children in smaller classes, and that is more likely to be in the richer families, effectively.
I get it. Mm-hmm.
And what they were saying, well, if previously the school had done badly, they put that into the equation, and someone who'd done well was downgraded. Someone, in fact, who in a school had done well previously but had done badly in the mocks were pushed up. Now, the mock examinations to me were a joke when I was at before university. I never really tried for those because very often teachers would actually mark you down to encourage you. Yeah, if you were clever, they sometimes would give you a C grade when you'd written an A or B grade paper. So to me, it's like saying that I'm training for soccer, and suddenly you're telling me that's the match, right? So mocks now have to go to teacher assessments, but of course they're unstandardized. But that's the best that we can do. It was not thought through carefully enough.
So you're saying really the kind of it's important to remove the bias when in the assessment, and if anything, just leaving it alone. And just going purely on the numbers, you're going to get a better outcome.
Absolutely right. I could write an algorithm to predict whether you would go to university or not. Like, did your mother go to university? Are you black? Are you white, etc. But that would not be a fair algorithm. But it would predict. So there's a difference between prediction, and fairness. And they need to be inspected very carefully for the impact on, let's call them minority and other groups.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have dreamed of actually. I developed an algorithm for selecting pub managers in the UK many years ago, and I checked it very carefully. It wouldn't have had adverse impact against specific groups. So you can't run it through a multiple regression equation to develop an algorithm without carefully checking each thing for age, sex, or gender, or whatever discrimination. So you can run it through a computer, but it can be a nonsense and cause an awful lot of bias. So you must check each variable going in.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I asked you the question. See many people using AI and machine learning when it comes to their algorithms. It's super important. 5
variables is all you need with unit weighting. 5 variables. Going beyond that does not usually reduce the actual the residuals. So about 5 variables. Cronbach showed this. It's well known in multiple regression. Only about 5 variables you require, and you don't need things with about 10 decimal points to them as weights. The unit weighting will do as well in a stable solution.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what was you going to add to that before we went?
No, I was going to say it's fascinating. What Peter uses the term validation of his wonderful instruments. Let me tell you what we're trying to do, and it's big and it's messy, and I think it's powerful. Think of 5 columns as outcomes. We have better employee results, the things you've talked about, wellness, experience. We have better organizational results, the right strategy. We have better customer results, net promoter score, investor results, and community results. Here's some results that we're trying to achieve. The columns represent the activities we can do. In talent, we have 9 talent investments. In organization, we have 12 capabilities. In leadership, we have 6 agendas. And in HR, we have 9 activities. So we have a giant grid, 5 outcomes by 36 activities. That's 180 cells. We have now created what you call a validation system for the psychometrics. We've created an organizational guidance system. We now go to a company and say, in that 180 cells, 5 outcomes, 36 activities, where should you invest this year? Where should you invest? Red, yellow, green, to keep it simple. We've created some algorithms and we've pilot tested this. It's taken us 1.5 years to create it. I am so psyched because we now have gone to some companies and said, in those 180 cells, how much do you spend? The numbers we're getting in most recent companies is $100 million. How do you know where you should spend it? Well, which of those activities will give you the outcomes? It's like a portfolio management for investment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We now are creating a guidance system that will, the internal work Peter does with psychometrics validates the tools. We now have a guidance system that says which of those tools will give me the outcomes I want the most. RBL.ai, it's online, and we're very different. We're giving it away for free. So you can go online and you can get it. And we're building a database of what companies can do to get guidance about where to invest in talent, organization, and leadership, and HR to succeed. Anyway, thanks for letting me share that. That's my passion right now.
Okay, perhaps we should join up with what we're doing with what you're doing.
I was just thinking that it complements each other.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I can send you some pieces. And by the way, this is real time. I mean, I just saw some of the data. I'm worried about going public, Peter, because I'm so careful with data. We've got a pilot. We've only got 100 companies and about 500 respondents. That's not enough to be valid. So we're trying to build the data pool so that we can get very good results. But the results are breathtaking. We can tell people 5 outcomes, 36 activities. Where should you invest to have the biggest impact on the outcomes you care about? That's the work we're doing. Anyway, it's fun to share some of that. And for me, it's fun to continue to learn. Thank you, Chris, for your time.
Yeah. I feel like we need part 2 because I'm conscious of time. No, you guys have to run as well. But I appreciate you both joining us on the show and taking the time out. Before we wrap up, there's one parting piece of advice you give to everyone. What would that be? And then where's the best place for people to check out your work, Peter? And also you mentioned already is it RBL.ai? Did you say?
Yes, RBL.ai. You can take the instruments and get a piece of data about guiding where you should invest your energy. Very simple.
Yeah. And I think the best place to follow you is on LinkedIn as always, Dave.
I'm on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yourself, Peter, where's the best place for everyone to learn more about your work and stay up to date with the work you're going to be doing and rolling out in the next few months?
Well, it'll be on 10xpsychology.com.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that will be coming out in September, October.
Fantastic.
But like a soccer team, you need good structure, and you also need talented people to put in that structure.
Mm-hmm.
So, on that we complement one another.
Good,
amazing. Well, you heard it here first, everyone. We're going to start off a partnership that's going to roll out here. Maybe like a few years from now, like when we all started on the podcast. But thank you so much for joining us, Peter and Dave. It's a pleasure as always. Appreciate you both joining us. If you're listening on LinkedIn or on YouTube, wherever you are right now, make sure you go and check out Dave's work and Peter's work. The links will be in the description. So if you click on the links, they'll be in the description to make life easier for you. Apart from that, Peter, enjoy the rest of your day. Yourself, have a good morning, Dave, to you. And I look forward to seeing you both again soon. Thanks a lot. See you later.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you very much.